Welcome to today's segment. The focus is vendor management. And Jim, thanks again for joining us.
Good to be here.
So let's start with this concept. People have been managing relationships the same for easily the past 2 decades. Can we agree upon that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
However, in spite of that, things have changed significantly.
Yeah.
So why do you think that is, and what are some of your recommendations?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. We see other industries where they have a much different way of managing these relationships in, for example, manufacturing, supply chain, and so forth. But in the IT outsource space, it's stayed very much the same for 20 years. We talked to a big financial services firm recently where they're still using SharePoint and file uploads from vendors, right? Which is very typical of the people we speak to in terms of how they manage these relationships today.
Do you think it's a mentality thing, or do you think it's just maybe limited resources, or is it something else?
Yeah, I think it is a mentality. I think there's some, frankly, maybe a little bit of fear on both sides in terms of the change in relationship that will occur through a different way of governing and managing. There's some comfort in these long contracts that are negotiated over many years. So I think there is a bit of a mentality at play here. Yeah.
However, the buyers are still a bit unhappy, right?
Yeah,
so they're doing things the same and they're looking for something different, right? Maybe all of us are. So what are some of your recommendations?
Yeah, what we've seen is that IT organizations that connect with all their providers and think about the governance not as a reactive way of looking at the relationship and trying to eke out penalties at the end of the month or end of the quarter. Instead, looking and managing it on a real-time basis, we find that their level of satisfaction with the service goes up dramatically.
So that gets back to that window pane, if you will, that you referred to, right?
Yeah.
That real-time monitoring and that connectedness.
Yeah.
Is it fair to say that helps fuel better vendor management? Or you could argue relationship management.
That's exactly right. A collaboration and relationship, yeah. And by the way, in the survey we did recently together with the Outsourcing Institute, we find that the propensity to renew the relationship and recommend the outsourcer to another company goes up dramatically when you have that kind of a relationship. So it's good for the buyer, it's good for the provider as well.
And Jim, with the minute we have left, what is your advice to those that are currently managing a handful of relationships and looking to get more out of them?
Yeah, I would say start now and build it into your RFP process. Make sure that when you bring on board new partners and establish these relationships, put that foundation, that connection in at the outset so that you really have a foundation you're building from going forward.
Excellent. Thanks again, Jim.
My pleasure.